on on that note, let's welcome Aaron. How are you,
Thank
sir?
you. It's all right. I just came from the Free Thought Festival in Madison, Wisconsin, and that was a pretty good time. I ran into Graydon Square and all the usual suspects: P.Z. Myers, J.T. Eberhard, uh, well, a whole bunch of people with a bunch of initials before and after their names. And I'm sorry that I'm late. It was P.Z. Myers' daughter who gave me a ride from the convention back here to their home, and as apparently a long country drive. And I'm sorry I wasn't coordinated a little better, but
Was
happy to
that
be
was
here.
that a nice little subtle way of saying that you're staying with PC Myers at the moment?
What's that?
Is that a subtle way of saying that you're staying with PC Myers at the moment?
No, he's left.
You're just in his house.
No, I'm in his family's house.
Oh, well, whatever. Now, Concordance made a promotional video for this show in which he wanted to, or raised an issue in the video that he wanted to discuss on the show, and I think he's back with us. He had to disappear for a second. Are you back with this, Concordance?
Yes.
Okay. The floor is yours, Concordance.
So what I wanted to talk about is strategies and things that people can actually do if they feel so motivated to help combat the introduction of creationism into the public school classroom, at least in the United States, if not worldwide. And it sort of came across that there have been a lot of new bills introduced in various U.S. state legislatures, freedom bills. And those freedom bills are popping up all over the South and in a few places in the sort of mid-Atlantic. There are things that you can do, and it's great that Aaron is here because Aaron is much more of an activist than I am. But you can certainly start at the National Center for Science Education, the NCSE's webpage. Has a number of things that you can do, like going to school meetings, talking with your school principal. Obviously, if you don't have kids, you can be active in your community, but also promoting science in general. And I think everyone on this call, if they feel that science is an important value or an important methodology that we want to keep teaching people in our schools, then that's something you can actually take an active role in promoting. It can be through your time, your presence, your dollars. There are local networks. If anyone out there is from Texas, the Texas Free Thought Network, I'm sorry, Texas Freedom Network has sponsored a number of things. There are normally state agencies near you if you live in the U.S. and Canada. So, Aaron, what do you have to say on activism towards protecting the classroom?
Well, one of the reasons that I was made Texas State Director for American Atheists is because people were turning to me when they end up with problems like this, and I'd like that to see that continue. When parents are concerned that they see teachers teaching creationist ideas or denouncing evolution or what have you, then they would generally be contacting me, or hopefully would, amongst the other organizations that you just mentioned. However, the situation is not as bad as it once was with regard to evolution. The McElroy, or McLeroy, is no longer in office. He's been a national embarrassment. And one of the reasons that there are so many of these organizations in Texas is because his voting bloc, the people that were set up specifically for that purpose, to undermine science education and spread textbooks under Texas influence, Texas creationist influence across the rest of the country, they all had to be centered here. This is why the activism began here. This is where the opposition has to be against the strongest attack. As I said, McLeroy is no longer in, has been replaced by a couple of people. The extreme right-wing weirdos that were on there before are starting to be replaced. We don't have quite as bad a situation as we did a year or two ago with regard to evolution. But of course, that's not the only front. We have really big issues with science education and social studies and several other avenues going on at the same time. And the religious right is still trying to infuse, imbibe, indoctrinate through the school systems in Texas and several other states as well, against, as you know, environmental issues and human rights issues of all kinds. So there's a heck of a lot to work on, not just on evolution anymore.
Would you allow me to read something very briefly?
Sure, please do.
It's the Louisiana Science Education Act, which was passed and has not yet been repealed. And it, let's see.
We discussed this on the
teachers'
previous show,
principles,
didn't we, with Zach? I can't remember his second name. Wasn't
right?
So this is
right.
a rehab.
Yeah, this is the one.
right?
And this
Okay.
is they failed to recently failed to repeal it. Teachers, principals, and other school administrators to create and foster an environment within public and secondary schools that promotes critical thinking skills, logical analysis, so far so good, and open and objective discussion of scientific theories being studied, including evolution, the origins of life, global warming, and human cloning. They're coming after cloning as though it were a real controversial issue for, did you get this, elementary school students to discuss and critically examine. All right, I'm in the sciences. I would have a hard time giving you the strengths and weaknesses of human cloning. Global warming is not something that a 15-year-old is prepared to discuss on the fact of the evidence. So what's going to happen is you've opened the door to bad teaching. You've given the teacher a license to indoctrinate children in a particular viewpoint. Now, good teachers will continue to teach this with elements of critical thinking added. Bad teachers will no longer be able to criticize bad teachers who want to use the teacher's desk as a pulpit to talk about their conservative values. And that's what this really is. It's couched in terms of critical thinking and reasoning skills, which I do want to see students pick up, but not in examinations of 200-year-old theories that are fundamental to science. 15-year-olds are not armed to deal with these issues. They're not prepared to deal with these issues on the evidence because they're not at that point in their careers.
The critics of that would say that, oh, well, you're just trying to protect Darwinism.
I mean, the thing that cuts to the heart of all of this is, in order to become a theory, you've got to be able to make predictions of reality. Right? That's what distinguishes good theories from ones that get rejected or lost in the chatter. And in this sense, I would be perfectly happy to say, what are the predictions that you can make from like evolution, and you can get, and this is the thing, what's the point of having people discuss this sort of thing when you say, well, you've got things like the fusion site in chromosome 2 of the human genome. What's the point of actually presenting this sort of thing when they don't even know what chromosomes are, they don't know what fusion sites are, they don't know what centromeres are? You've got to cover the basics, and the idea that you should worry the children with things that they don't even have the repertoire to address is crazy.
What they want to do is they want to instill a fundamental distrust of science by misinforming them.
Evolution at its all you need for evolution is two factors. You need non-perfect reproduction and environmental attrition. From that, you will get evolution. It follows inevitably.
But the language that Concordance is talking about isn't just about indoctrinating kids. The language that Concordance was just reading back, and if you go back over it, you'll see it. It's preventing teachers who want to deliberately misinform students. The teachers who want to lie to students will be able to do so with impunity because others...
I'm sorry, Aaron. I'm not saying that you're wrong if you look at the entire text, but the passage that Concordance read out did not do that. It did not promote any particular teaching of anything. It just said it invited a broader discussion of certain issues. Now, I accept that would give some teachers leeway to legitimately teach certain things that we would be uncomfortable with, but it is not a carte blanche for them to do so, unless there's something else in the Act that Concordance hasn't read out.
No, that's what I was telling you. What's embedded in there is language that prevents the teachers from being criticized or challenged for having done this. It's subtle. You have to read through it, but what it does is it provides a legal loophole wherein a teacher who is lying to students can be able to cite law to support their being able to do so, and they can't be criticized by the other teachers for doing it.
And I think that's the most dangerous aspect of all these new approaches, these sort of freedom bill acts, is that they don't explicitly state what their agenda is. And this very open-ended language is designed to draw educators out into suing, right, into another, what were the different, McLean and Perkins versus Arkansas, all these different legal battles over whether or not it's religious, by presenting it strictly as a critique of evolution. They can allow students, or a critique of global warming. Can you imagine a bunch of, again, 15, 14, whatever-year-olds sitting around in the classroom and the teacher says, let's examine the evidence for global warming, right? Let's really critically think about this, right? And what is that teacher going to be doing? How could a teacher possibly be neutral on hot-button topics like this, which is not to say they have to be avoided.
Not even that. They don't even have the basic knowledge to discuss the problem.
Right.
In order to actually understand global warming, you need to be able to understand thermodynamic equilibria.
Right.
And
even if you had the advantage of being able to use Potholer 54 or Green Man's videos in the classroom, those still are not going to adequately explain the situation. And Thunder's right on this. I mean, there's just no way that the teacher can prepare the students. There's no way the teacher herself will be prepared.
Can I just ask, what are your views on why it is that they have chosen those three specifics? I think if I remember correctly, Concordance, you referred to evolution, global warming, and cloning.
Because they're hot button for Republicans. This is all sort of pandering. Because there's no chance that it's really going to stay. It is. It's disparate issues, but they're hoping to cover as many bases. They're kind of spamming out legislation here. In a single bill, they've opened the door to all these issues that they would love to have the voters controversial about. They want to be the party that opposes global warming, right, for obvious reasons.
I'm just somewhat surprised that it wasn't evolution, global warming, cloning, and abortion.
They can't say abortion. That's why cloning is a proxy for abortion.
They can't say abortion.
No, of course not. That's explicitly religious. I mean, that's going to be a really easy one. Right to life is a religious argument. But that's why because they can't say that, they have to code it. They have to put it behind very esoteric language. Cloning is not a risk. It's not a major issue facing this nation. Right? So they have to come up with things that can obviously be couched in scientific terms, but are obviously proxy for the right of a teacher to indoctrinate students along certain lines, right? Along the majority lines, even if those egg-headed liberals who run the science world don't agree.
Because an important point here is that we're not dealing with people who don't have a adequate understanding of science. I mean, that's not the core of who they are. The core of who they are is lawyers, So it's not a science argument. It's legalese. They're setting themselves up for a lawsuit, and always have been. They always meant to fight these things out in the courts, not with scientific evidence.
I can tell you. I can tell. You go, Concordance.
All right, so the day that I see a bill mandating in history class that students discuss the strengths and weaknesses of the Holocaust, the evidence for the Holocaust, or the strengths and weaknesses of colonialism, whether or not it was a good thing or not, all these sort of hot and button revisionist slavery, right? They're not going to debate the merits of slavery theory.
The conspiracies of 9/11.
Yeah, there you go. Perfect.
So the pros and cons. I mean, we need the academic freedom to teach it in schools.
False flag. False flag needs to be taught in schools as an alternative theory, right? That's the kind of approach that we're dealing with here. It's very subtle language, and I think that there is a real danger here that we did not see in previous incarnations, where they were very frank about what they were trying to do. They were trying to present alternative theories, and now they're couching it in terms of critical thinking, which everyone's for critical thinking, unless you're very careful about what exactly it's doing. It's opening the doors to proselytizing by educators.
Yeah, and what else they've done is by inviting critical thinking of elementary school students for complex subjects that most adults don't understand, they're asking to critically analyze, meaning they're just abbreviate it, they're asking to criticize. Go ahead.
The NCSE, I think, really hit the button on the nail on the head here when they said what we're essentially doing here is sowing the seed to America's downfall. You've got to play the long game. In 20 years' time, these children will, well, not even 20 years' time, 10 years' time, these children will emerge and maybe go on to university. And if you've done the equivalent of break their kneecaps whilst they were at school, then they're not going to be effective at operating in a technologically advanced civilization. And I can tell you, and the NCSE has made this point too, that America is currently kept afloat by importing researchers from other countries, folks like myself. And people only do that because America is currently attractive. I forget what it is. It's some huge fraction, 70% of the people doing engineering and mathematics at American universities are Chinese or, from the East. And that only is going to keep going whilst it's attractive for them to come to America. You scroll the clock forward 10 years, why should they leave their native home and come to America? Now, that was great when they were sort of permanently hungry in China, but now in China, they can live like they can live in America. They can get their car, their house, their whatever. Why should they come to America? And when that happens, it will be a very unpleasant shock for America in that where's it now going to import its brains from? You need to be able to grow these yourself.